All right, everybody, welcome to Visible Kindness. I'm very excited to have, now this is going to be a very interesting episode. This is going to be very, very interesting. I've been visiting with Paul Glover for the last half an hour, and I felt really bad because I need to record the podcast. And I got to tell you, everything we were talking about can't be on the podcast because I was doing most of the talking. But we had a really great time. Paul's a very interesting man. He reached out to me a few months ago, and I thought, man, I like what this guy's doing and who he is. And so I just searched and did all of the things I could do to find out what he does. And in one of it, I think it's with your book, Paul, I think it says, I'm a No B.S. executive leadership coach. Is that on your book?
Sure, it is.
My legal full name is Brian Edward Squire. So my initials are BS. And so you're a No B.S. executive leadership coach. So I can learn a lot from you, and I know it because I've looked at so much of what you do. You have such an interesting story. I'm looking forward to what we're about to do here today. So and I'm just going to keep this brief because I want to hear you explain yourself. I love it when I get TEDx speakers that are to be on the show. I love hearing what they've done and what is the purpose behind what they've done on that space, and just putting it short. I love how you say. I shouldn't say I love how you say, but I'm going to quote, my journey from the courtroom to the convict to SME on failure, recovery, and success hasn't been linear. Well, I don't even understand what that means. I don't get it all. I do because I've watched a lot of your content. It's a very powerful, very interesting story. And your book is called WorkQuake, Making the Seismic Shift to an Information Economy. So welcome to the show, Paul, and glad to have you here. Glad to visit with you, and introduce yourself some more and give us some background on what you're doing and how you got here.
Well, Ed, thank you so much. Obviously, we've already had an interesting conversation, and it has been interesting and illuminating. So my journey is encapsulated in that trajectory that you already mentioned. Very successful trial lawyer in the city of Chicago, but also a adrenaline junkie. I loved the trial work. I loved being in court. I loved the jury. And I loved the combat, the verbal combat that took place. But that turned me into an adrenaline junkie. And the problem was, between trials, the preparation was 3 to 6 months, and it bored me to death. I sought adrenaline through my clients, who were, to be kind, disreputable, and also counted on me to keep them out of jail. And they invited me into a very exclusive club, but the initiation for that club was committing illegal acts. So I did so. I needed to belong. I wanted to belong. I loved what they did because of that adrenaline hit that you would get from illegal activities.
No kidding. So you've said this a lot. I know that. I know you said that. Well, you've said a lot and many times. But just when I just think about what you just said, it's like I just told you before we hit record. I hired a lawyer. He's a top law firm in Canada that helped me get through suing the school board through the Supreme Court. And now what you're telling me is I'm thinking of my lawyer and I'm thinking of you. I'm like, wow, these are two very different people, very different. Because you could have adrenaline like suing a school board that has, because the problem was there were kids that were abused, and that could be an adrenaline rush, and here you go having this job like that, and in the courtroom is what got you, was adrenaline pushing for you. And that drew you down into this black space. That is incredible.
Well, and again, yes, that the opportunity is always there, and you always have choices to make about whether or not you're going to take an opportunity. They gave me an opportunity to get what I asked for, and that was admission to the group and the adrenaline high that came with that admission. And in exchange for that, I committed illegal acts that eventually put me in prison for 5.5 years. Do I regret it? Well, of course I regret it. Do I miss it? I absolutely miss the adrenaline high. I can tell you that
the adrenaline high of being in prison.
No, the adrenaline high.
Where would the adrenaline? You'd have to import that.
You're right. Yeah. But by the way, there is no adrenaline high in prison. There is
Can't imagine.
There's a fear inducement.
Yeah, I would think so.
You're constantly on edge in prison. You never know when violence is going to break out. It is absolutely, you can't be ready for it. It just happens for any reason or no reason. So yeah, prison is a bit very polite, by the way, because if you act impolite, somebody's going to knock the shit out of you. So it's always interesting to see. Prison was an experience for 5.5 years. It was also transformational. I realized that if I did not change who I was and how I acted, then I was going to lose my family and be a career criminal. And that's where I was headed. I managed, because of my wife, I managed to actually engage in the transformation for the last 3 years that I was in prison. First 2 years, I engaged in revenge fantasy. When I got out, I was going to get even for everyone who'd put me in prison. I accepted no responsibility.
Wow.
Yeah, that's called ego.
Wow.
So, hubris, pride.
I get that too. Taking responsibility for yourself, and I mean we've all experienced that, but not everybody has experienced doing what you've done in that. I have, but it was really hard to look at myself in the mirror, and that's where we're going. And I never heard you. I mean, I've heard your story on TED Talk, but not on a podcast. But this is very interesting. So you had to get over that.
Oh, absolutely, I did, and I can tell you the seminal point was I'd been in prison for 2 years. And I started to see men who had been in prison when I got there be released and come back. Recidivism is over 80% in the federal system. Wow. And the realization dawned on me that if I did not transform, that was going to be my life. I would be a career criminal who did not have a family and spent most of my life in prison. That shock led me to engaging in the transformation process. Without that just slap in the face, I would never have changed. I had no inducement to change. I was not ready for it. I didn't believe I had to. Like I said, revenge fantasy. I was going to get even for everyone who had done bad things to me. I was not responsible or accountable.
I can. This is going to sound weird, but I can relate to that because when I told you before we started about the abuse that I received when I was a young kid. And so all through my life, when I went through the stuff that I was telling you about, that I'm not going to talk about on this show, I was always angry. It's not my fault. I mean, if these things never happened to me, I would not be doing these things. So It's like, what am I supposed to do? It was so hard for me to get into the moment. Is the only way I can think of it is not think about the future and not think about the past, but who are you? Like, who am I? And I came to the realization that I can be anyone and be anything I want, which was a weird thought, but because my whole life had been kind of like just erased with just living as a survivor of trauma and abuse, there was nothing smart about what I did, but I had to stop and think, if I don't change, just like you, if I don't change, I'm going to stay in this trench of a horrible lifestyle. This is so cool. I'm relating to what you're saying.
Well, and I think
I didn't go to prison.
Well, thank God. I'm glad you didn't. But I do think that most of us go through this to a lesser degree than the experiences we've had.
Sure. Yeah.
The reality is, are you going to choose to take control of your life, or are you going to continue to be a victim? And I chose for the variety of reasons, basically my family, to take control of my life, not allow my ego and my id to continue to dictate my behavior. But that requires that you not only take control, but you start to change. You do the actions necessary to be accountable and responsible and become a different person. We all have that opportunity. Hard work, terribly hard work, never over. Like I said, I fight my ego now as I did back then.
I agree.
Yeah. So the struggle. If you go into transformation and you believe that it's done, it's never over.
Nope.
And you better be committed to the journey of continuing the rest of your life if you're serious.
Yes.
It's interesting to me how people often start, but very quickly find out how hard it is and quit. It's easier to be a victim than it is to be in control. You make a choice based off of what becomes important to you. And you have to find that. If you can't find your purpose, you can't change. There's no reason to. It's not powerful enough. Once you find your purpose, and by the way, we can have more than one. Once you find your purpose, then you can develop the tenacity to commit to the change. That's what we talk about. And by the way, we talk about purpose all the time, but we seldom define it. Got to define it, and it's got to be connected to your heart.
So
it has to be.
You probably don't know this, but my speaking, I don't know if the word platform is right, but what I speak about this, I mean, yes, I speak about the things I told you, but what drives me is the purpose speech. I've got my company is called Me Too What Now, right? And it's about you. Me Too means discovering yourself in the darkness, right? Here I am. And then the next question is, so what now? And then it's fine. So underneath there's a logo. It says, not a logo, but it says, if you need to find yourself, then you need to live yourself, then you need to give yourself. And that's to answer your question about visible kindness, that is actually part of my what now. And it's so interesting that what you're telling me is I'm like, that's what I focus on is I love talking about purpose in life, and man, I really appreciate this. We'll have to do more. We're gonna do this guy. This is part one, everyone, for sure.
Well, by the way, like I said, I think the two of us connected very quickly. The first 15, 20 minutes we were talking, it could have gone on as a 3-hour conversation
for sure.
Easily. But yes, and so interestingly enough, I believe that if you've got purpose, you have to have support. I don't think anybody can do this journey of transformation without support.
No,
that's why if you're talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, that's a support group. I got my support, and I read a very interesting piece about middle-aged kings. Kings were anointed by divine right. God appointed them as king. Because of that, if you contested the king in any way, you committed the crime of heresy because you were basically challenging God, right? If the king was appointed by God, he could do no wrong. However, everyone knows that kings were not infallible as human beings. The question was, how do you challenge the king and not get your head cut off? Well, curiously, the medieval society developed the concept of the fool. We see the fool as a gesture, a performer who sits at the foot of the throne, get up, dance around, tell a joke, entertain the king. That was not the function of the fool. The fool, because they were looked at as being insane because of the way they dressed or acted, became the trusted advisor to the king. They had the psychological safety to tell the king when they were doing something wrong and not get their head cut off. That counterbalanced the king's authority. I looked at that and I said, that to me is what I need. I need a fool in my life. And the person that I sat down with to do this was my wife. She's the one that loved me the most.
You're still married after all this. That's incredible. Were you married when you were in prison?
Absolutely. We've been married for a decade. Went to prison. She stayed with me. She's my true north. She stayed with me for 5.5 years of incarceration. By the way, my family had no idea I was a crook.
Holy cow.
Oh, the financial and emotional devastation. I left them financially destitute. I had 2 trials, spent all of our money, our savings, my kids, my 2 boys' college education funds, took out another mortgage on the house, and went to prison for 5.5 years for crimes I committed. She stayed with me, and we have been together now. I got out in 2001. We've been together for 43 years.
Oh, my gosh. That is so great. That is so great.
And by the way, we're sitting in the visiting room, 300 other inmates and their families, and I talked to her about this. I want to transform. I want to change, but I need you to be my support. And I said, so tell me that that'll happen. And she said, no. She said, I'm not interested. And I was obviously stunned. I was like, wait a minute, I'm telling you I'm going to do this, and you're saying you're not going to support me? She said, I know who you are. I've been married to you for a decade. We're going to end up, every time I make a suggestion about you changing, we're going to end up in a debate. and you're going to tell me why I'm wrong or why you don't have to or why you shouldn't.
Wow.
And she said, why would I drive 5.5 hours to sit in this hot, crowded visiting room to argue with you about this? So she said, I'm not going to do it. Shocked me. She left.
Good for her. Good for she. Wait. When you say she left, did she leave the marriage?
No.
Okay.
She did not. She left the visiting room.
Left the building.
Yeah, we were.
Good for her, though. Am I getting this message right? Because when I say good for her,
oh hell yeah,
it sounds to me like yeah, I do the same. Like you got to take responsibility for yourself. You have to. You don't. There's no team on this when you're trying to get. There's no team on my side when I through my journey. I had to come to the point where like. I can't blame it on this. I can't blame it on that. I had to. Oh, it is rough coming to that point. It is rough coming. Was it like that for you? It was for me.
Absolutely. I mean, and so the person that I loved the most, that I respected the most, said she wouldn't do it. She came back the next she visited every month for 5.5 years. Didn't matter what the weather was. Didn't matter. She drove 5.5 hours, spent a day and a half, and drove back. She got a backbone of iron. And I said, look. I need you to do this. I need you to support me. Tell me what I have to do to get your support. She said, simple. Every time I come down here, I'm going to have 3 things that I want you to do to change. And over the 30 days between our visits, you're going to do something that when I come back, you can convince me that you've done something to change. And she said, the first time you don't, I'm out. I'll stay here. I'll be your wife, but I'm not helping you. Wow. She said, because you've got to convince me you mean it. And that means you have to do things. And I'm going to tell you what they are.
You're a lucky man, my friend.
Extraordinary.
I mean, for real. You are for real a lucky man.
Yeah,
not that she just stuck through you, but she plowed through. This is incredible. It really is incredible.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact she stayed with me is incredible. I definitely don't deserve her or my family. But I took it. I didn't have a choice. So she gave me, by the way, that we had, from the time of that conversation, we had 3.5 years of prison left. She never came down without a list. And I hated this because she told me, she said, we're going to have this discussion the last 30 minutes of our visit before she would drive back to Chicago. So we would have this visit and not talk about this until the last 30 minutes when she would tell me the 3 things. And the only thing I could say in response was, thank you.
Sorry, did you say this because that's the only thing you could manage to pull off, or that's what you were allowed to do?
That was what I was allowed to do.
Okay, I get that. I went through that.
There we go. You see, I think that most of us, if we are looking for transformation and change, this journey is very similar for everyone. Those people who don't understand it, they have not made the decision to transform.
You know, I have to tell you, so when I'm thinking of my life so much, as you share your life, I'll never forget when, you know, in a similar situation, it doesn't matter what, it was just similar. And I was married and we were broke and, you know, it was either, you know, they were coming to get our car and I kept telling the bank, just come and get it. Stop calling me. And I'm doing my best to get the money. And we were 3 months behind on the rent. Everything was horrible. And we used to go to church, and it was either go to church on Sunday or go to the food bank because we don't have enough gas to go to both. So we went to the food bank, which was at the church. And I'll never forget the pastor of the food bank. He says, we like to hear like what are you guys going through? Like just share your experience with us, right? So I'm talking because I talk about all the problems we're having, all the problems. And he's and I'm like, I'm getting it all out, right? And he sits back. He goes, wow. That's what he did. And he goes, wow. He said, that's a lot of words. And I thought, I mean, I was like, what do you mean that's a lot of words? I was angry. Like, what are you talking about? You want to hear all the hardships we're going through. And he's like, that's a lot of words. He goes, I'm going to talk to your wife here for a minute. And he points to my wife and he says, look, here's how Ed's going to work for until you come back next week. He's not going to say any words at all unless they are relevant to the conversation that you're in, and none of it's going to be about the problems that you're having. And I stood there, I'm like, I mean, I was just like, I wanted to start talking some more. And she goes, and she said, when you come back, I want you to tell me how it went. And I'm like, what? So I kind of felt like you. I mean, I was just like, I'm just like in this frustrated place, and I didn't understand what you were being told was very powerful and the right thing. And so was I. This is so great.
Well, and you're spot on about not being able to say anything except thank you about killed me.
Yeah, so made me think of that. Like, don't say
Yeah,
anything.
exactly. She would say something and she was serious and it mattered. And I'll tell you, Ed, the first thing that she said was, "You have never been of service to anyone else in your life. It has always been about you. And between now and 30 days, when I come back, you better tell me how you're being of service." And it was striking to me that was something that first it hurt, but it was true. It was all about me. My clients, I would win. It was not for them. I never won for them. I won for me. They just paid me. So the ability to perform was all about me. That was what I looked at the trial being, right? I was going to be a performer. I got to be on stage. The light was on me. The spotlight shined, and I got to perform, and I got applause. And, the thing that gave me joy was that, not being of service. So I'll tell you what I did. As soon as she left, and I thought about this because when I knew that I had to do something, and I've always believed if you have to do something, you want to do something big, right? But first, I wanted to impress her with the fact that I was committed to this. So I went to the head of the prison education department. And if you're in the federal system and you don't have a high school diploma, you're forced to go to GED classes. So I went to the head of the department. I said, "I want to teach GED." And he said, "What, are you insane? There are 14 young black drug dealers from East St. Louis that are required to be in this class." He said, "We can't find anybody to teach it because they run them out." And I said, "That's my group. That's a challenge. That's the group I want." And I went in, and the first meeting, all 14 of them were there. And I walked in, old white guy, 50 years old in prison.
Jeez.
And so you can see him look at me and go, "Hey, what are you going to talk to us about?" And I had bought a box of playing cards, packs of playing cards. And I said, "Look, you're required to be here, but I know you don't want to be here. So if you don't want to hear what I have to say, I'm going to give you a pack of playing cards. Go over to the side, play cards. Anybody that wants to stay here and listen to what I have to say, fine. The only thing is, if you go over there, you can't interrupt the class." 12 of them went to play cards.
Wow.
Two of them were looking at me like, "I can't wait to hear what you're going to say, old man, so I can laugh at you." I picked up the GED book and I said, "Can you guys read and write?" And they both said yes. I said, "Then read the book and pass the test." And they were like, "Whoa." I said, "Because I don't care what's in this book. What I'm going to talk to you about is how you cannot return to prison. What you have to do to not come back." That was what I was there for. It wasn't to teach GED. A month and a half later, all 14 of them were sitting there because that's what we talked about.
Wow.
We talked about not to come back to prison. First time I'd ever been of service. I still stay in touch with those guys.
Oh, come on. That is so great. Really,
I'm 24 years out of prison, and I still am in touch with two of these guys.
Is that right?
That's how that was the beginning of transformation for me.
That is so powerful. Man, we burned 25 minutes. I'd like to hear about your book, and share that with us if you would. I mean, I looked at it on Amazon and stuff, and excuse me, I'm going to order that because I'm very interested in reading that. But give us a rundown on that book. It's very interesting.
Absolutely. First, the book is 12 years old. And when I finished the book and it was published, I told my editor, I said, "Nobody's going to read this book." And he was like, "Well, I think it's a pretty good book." I said, "No one's going to read it." I said, "First, half of the book is about self-care. 12 years ago, the concept of leaders and self-care was alien. Nobody talked about it. And my contention is, if you as a leader want to be effective, you've got to take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Physically, mentally, psychologically, you've got to take care of yourself. 12 years ago, Ed, if you had said that to a leader, they would have looked at you like you were speaking Greek.
Oh, I relate to it. I mean, when I worked for so many Fortune 500 companies, interestingly enough, in Europe, they understood. In America, they didn't. Yep.
Nope. So that was it. So the book is divided into two parts. It was called the morning mantra, which was the health aspect of it, and the other part was leadership education. It was all about what I thought the concept of leadership should be, and I still do, by the way. But nobody else did because I talked about how you have to have dialogue, not a monologue. How you have to give people psychological safety so they'll tell you the truth, right? You don't know what your business is unless you talk to the people who actually run your business. But they're afraid to tell you anything because you're the boss, you're the king.
That's right.
So I built this book based off of leadership lessons that require that you treat your employees as if they were your partners. And then you treated yourself with compassion, and you treated yourself with self-care. And on basis of those two, the book developed. The book is now doing very well. It took 12 years before people started buying the book. But the podcasts have moved people to buy the book.
Sure.
The lessons in the book are as relevant now, if not more so, than they were 12 years ago. So that's the book. That's where it came from. It was based off of my coaching. By the way, I got out of prison. I couldn't get hired, right? I can't practice law anymore. And I'm a convicted 54-year-old felon. Not a good job market. So I decided to generate my own career. And I took the concept of the fool and I turned it into a coaching process. When I get a client, and by the way, 80% of those who are referred to me don't do business with me because I tell them how hard the journey is to become a better leader. And I also tell them that I will be your fool. I am going to be the person that gives you the gift of truth. You're not going to like it most of the time, but you need to hear it. And then I'm going to force you to do something about it. By the way, my wife is the model for my coaching process.
Oh, is that right?
Well, of course.
That's so great. That is so great.
Everything that she did, I said, if it worked on this numbnuts, I can make this thing work as a coaching program.
Wow.
And that's what it has been. Oh, yeah. So yes, we have to have a goal. We have to have an action plan. Every time we talk, you need to tell me what you did to move forward. So absolutely, her process turned into a managerial process, a leadership process.
Sure.
And I'll tell you, I need to give you one. I asked for a reference from one of my coaching participants, and he said, "I'm going to give you two. You pick which one you want." I said, "Fine." He said, "Paul is an acquired taste, like cyanide."
Okay. Okay.
I said, "I'm not going to use that one." He said, "All right." The second one is, Paul is like a Sherpa. He will get you to the mountaintop, but he will not carry your pack.
Okay, that works. Yeah. Actually, I watched an Everest movie last night, interestingly. And
there we go.
It didn't go good.
So I have the process from my wife, and I had that statement about my process, and that's how I coach. So leadership coaching is based on those two premises.
Wow, you have such an amazing story. We definitely have to do another episode. It would be great. I would love to. What I would love to do, I would love to talk through the process of healing using these principles, because it's what I've been through and still working on in my life. It'd be great to have a show where definitely be telling people you need to listen to this episode so you know who you are, who I am, and then the second episode where we're talking about how to change your life like this and make a difference, because we're facing so many horrific things in our culture today. It's almost too hard to believe, because I mean, when you and I grew up, there was no computers, there was no telephones. I mean, there's no answering machines. There was none of that. And just with social media the way it is, AI the way it is, politics, economy, just everything. The world is so heavy in so many things. It'd be great to have an episode. We have to plan it out or something. But I think we could do something to really make a difference in people's lives.
I'm with you. And by the way, you speak about the recovery process. And I think that it's so important for people to understand how difficult it is, but the results generate the need to do this. But also the concept of failure is something we run away from, even though I believe it comprises 50% of our life. We fail and we fail, but you know what we do? We ignore it. We run away from it. We move on from it. My contention is the universe will teach you a lesson until you learn it. And failure is you have not learned the lesson. Let's examine the failure, not run away from it, and determine what you have to do so it doesn't happen again. This is a step-by-step process that absolutely gets you where you want to go, but you can't avoid the process. And people don't want the process. It's painful. Self-examination is extraordinarily painful.
Yeah, I relate.
Oh, yeah, I know you do. You've gone through it. Looking at the traumas that we've had in our life, even self-induced or induced by somebody else. The trauma, it doesn't matter where it came from, it has the same impact.
That's right.
And
That's right.
You have to be able to absorb that impact and turn it into fuel. And the fuel has to do for success. Take that failure, take that trauma, take that energy that is there as a negative, and turn it into a positive. That process exists for everybody if they're willing to go through the stages.
I get it. Do you want to, I didn't ask you this before the show, so we can delete it if it doesn't work. I doubt it though. But do you want to promote, do you want to sell? Do you want to tell people how to get a hold of you for your coaching?
No, I don't. Believe me, the reason I'm having a conversation with you is not to generate business. It's to get my message out in front of someone who is empathetic enough to understand the value of the message.
Well, no wonder we've become quick friends, because I'm the same way. Like I told you before the podcast, most people don't know what I actually do. They think I do a podcast, but there's stuff I do that I don't even promote it.
And so I tell everyone I've got a LinkedIn URL. If you do want to talk to me about any of the things that we talked about or anything else.
Well, all your links, if you want, usually I collect, if there's any links you don't want, but let me know. But I always include that. It'll be on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and also be on all the auditable platforms.
Excellent. No, so I don't have a product to sell. If people want to buy my book, buy my book. I'm not pitching the book. I'm pitching the message.
I'm pitching the book. I'm going to get it. It really does. It just really does sound very, it's definitely my style. It's just to the point, and there's a difference between, I don't know, I've seen and read a lot on, but I guess there's really different approaches for different people. That's really what it is. You need to find what works for you. So I'm not going to talk down on anybody else. It's just that you need to find what works for you, and we're all different. So I like to ask at the end of the show, give me something. I can find a way to say this like in a short sentence, but share something with the audience that you would like to share that has to do with kindness at any level. It could be like, you said something nice to you donated to Salvation Army, or whatever, whether it's the impact you've made to all the people you've come into touch with, or just anything. What comes into your mind when I say share something with us that is kindness oriented, that has made an impact in your life, or that you want to make an impact with?
Well, I can tell you that because I stay with the concept of the fool. If you're fortunate enough to have someone in your life who can act as the fool, someone who loves you enough and cares enough about you to tell you the truth, you need to become someone else's fool. You need to pay your fortune forward. To me, that's what makes a difference. So once you've had that experience and you feel the value of it, you need to take it and find somebody who needs you as their fool.
That's good. I like that. I relate to that as well. I've been so fortunate to have people in my life like that. I appreciate. This is a great show. I really appreciate your time. I'm so glad because when you, I think you're the first person that I can think of where you reached out and I went, yeah. And usually I book like a 30-minute coffee, we meet and we talk, and I find out, is this going to work, and we just went for it. And I think this has been just really powerful. You have a powerful story, and you've been through so much. And I was really looking forward to hearing it from you. I'm glad you reached out. I'm saying thank you to you for being on my show. And I look forward to doing another one.
Absolutely. I think that's a must. That's a must. It really is. Well, thank you, Ed, for the opportunity to have the conversation with you. It's been invigorating. I like that. I like to hear about your journey because I think we all have a journey and a story. We often don't have an opportunity to tell it, or we're afraid to tell it because we're afraid we're going to be judged. And the reality is, telling your story, telling my story, should give other people permission to tell their story. I don't recommend anybody go to prison to have a good story, but I guarantee you, you've got one. You need to tell it to people. There's value in sharing.
I say that so much with what I do. I say that so much.
Well, you've got kindness as a part of who you are and what you're promoting. I absolutely believe in that. I think that it's definitely humanity needs this.
Yeah. Yeah,
and you're right. Now we've lost some humanity between the pandemic, AI, what's going on, autocracy. There needs to be humanity, and that means we need to connect and we need to share.
Paul, I want to thank you again for coming here. This is great. Let's do it again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ed.
All right.